Thank you, Justice Prosser, and I have to extend my apologies. I should have reiterated those ground rules, so my apologies. Okay, Attorney Earle.
Thank you, Mr. Gass. It is a pleasure to be here with you tonight, representing Assistant Attorney General Joanne Kloppenburg. I want to thank the Sheboygan Liberty Coalition and Oriana Paul for allowing me to be here to represent Attorney Kloppenburg. I guess I'm a trial lawyer from Milwaukee. I was sitting in my office at 3 o'clock this afternoon, and I got a phone call. He said, "Can you get to Sheboygan?" And I said, yes, because something had come up, and I had to come here instead of Assistant Attorney General Kloppenburg. And I guess I would start reflecting on the season opener in the last Packers season. I had the pleasure of going to the Eagles game in Philadelphia where they played the Packers. I had never been to an Eagles game, and I can tell you that the fans in Philadelphia were mean, and the environment was raw. And I thought to myself as I sat in the stands in that stadium, boy, I like Wisconsin, because in Wisconsin I go to a Packers game, and even though we're playing the Vikings, even though we're playing Chicago, and they're our rivals, and we cheer, we respect the other people in the stadium, even though we boo lovingly sometimes. But it's an attitude thing about Wisconsin. And I guess I tell that little story it's a personal lament that in this race we have two candidates running for office. And I got to tell you, I have had the pleasure and the honor to appear before Justice Prosser on a number of occasions in the Supreme Court and argue before him and attempt to answer his very difficult questions. I've also had the pleasure of introducing Justice Prosser at the investiture of my good friend Pedro Colon, who was appointed judge in Milwaukee County. And I guess I tell the story to lament the fact that in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin today, it seems that this race between two honorable attorneys, a sitting justice and an assistant attorney general, has been consumed by anger and tone that is unbecoming of the state. And it's not by the campaigns, it's by others speaking. The extreme elements on either side controlling the discourse. And I'm glad that we have these kinds of forums so citizens can come and understand who the candidates are. And obviously, I'm not Joanne Kloppenburg, so I get to tell you about her. And she is a litigator and a prosecutor in the Wisconsin Department of Justice since 1989. And she has served under 4 different attorney generals, 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. Her experience is broad. She has dealt with constitutional law, appellate law, civil litigation, environmental prosecution, and administrative law. She has appeared at all levels, from the trial court to the Supreme Court of Wisconsin. As a matter of fact, just last week there was a decision published by the Supreme Court where she was the lead attorney arguing for the state, the DNR, in a dispute over wastewater permits, a complicated dispute that I don't pretend to completely understand, because it had to do with the interplay of federal EPA regulations and Clean Water Act rules and state administrative rules for wastewater permits at the DNR level. And she argued that case, presented it to the Supreme Court, and she won. And in that case, she was up against environmental groups who took a different position than she did, than the DNR did. And Justice Prosser was in the majority opinion in that case. Shirley Abrahamson and Ann Walsh Bradley dissented in that case, as I recall. So I point that out for the purpose of making the point that I believe Attorney Kloppenburg is open-minded and fair. And I want to make that point. She is a graduate of Yale from 1974. She got her law degree from the University of Wisconsin Law School in 1988. That's the year I graduated from law school. So she's been practicing a little over about 22 years. She has a master's in public affairs from Princeton University from 1976, and while she was in law school, she served as an intern for Justice Shirley Abraham, and was subsequently a law clerk for Chief Judge Barbara Crabb of the Western District Court in Madison. She's taught law school. She's been a Peace Corps volunteer. She went to Botswana between 1976 and 1979, and she remains active as a member of the Legal Association for Women Law, it's called. She's a mentor in the Dane County Bar Association and teaches English as a second language as a tutor and a mentor in her neighborhood association. So that's the basic background sketch of Assistant Attorney General Kloppenburg. She's been endorsed by a number of papers. She was endorsed by the Wausau Daily Herald, who had to say, and this is important because I think this is true, I believe this. And I'm quoting from the editorial endorsement there. It says, quote, "We don't know how Justice David Prosser or his challenger, Assistant Attorney General Joanne Kloppenburg, would rule on the specifics of changes to collective bargaining or any other policy put forward by Governor Scott Walker or the Republican legislature." And that's as it should be. We have to have faith that our candidates for the Supreme Court of this state do not prejudge cases. And I'm glad that the Wausau Daily Journal says that they do not know how either Justice Prosser or his opponent would vote on these things. I think that's important because you can have faith in the quality of our legal system if you know that the judge hearing the case has not made his or her mind up before the case is presented to them. You holding my
30 seconds?
Okay. Assistant Attorney General Kloppenburg was also endorsed by the Green Bay Press Gazette. And I'm going to read from that endorsement. It says, "During her campaign, Kloppenburg has made every effort, sometimes almost to a fault, to articulate and emphasize her independence, a quality we agree is critical for justices to rule fairly." During an interview with the Green Bay Press Gazette editorial board, the Assistant Attorney General expressed a reluctance to discuss certain cases that have come before the High Court, or that might ostensibly come before the High Court, for fear of betraying any inkling of preconceived bias. I close by saying that, asking you to consider voting for Attorney General Kloppenburg. I assure you that she approaches legal issues meticulously with an open mind. She has not prejudged these matters, and I did not come here to speak negatively or say anything critical of Sitting Justice Prosser. With that, I've been